2021 was Humankind's first calendar year in the world, and while every Bob and Sally has given their opinion on Humankind, I think it's time that we sit back and reflect on Humankind, give it a school report card, if you will, some gradings perhaps, and reflect on why a mixed launch turned into what is now, when it's not being review bombed, a mostly positive success story. Let's jump in, and first I should note that I've covered Humankind in many different ways and forms. I've copped flack for calling it out, and I've copped flack for selling its praises. But before you flick to those end credits, let's jump into a brand new game and discuss Humankind. I'm going to cover off how it's changed so far, first of all, and then move through into my report card, reflecting critically on what it's done right and wrong, and what the future holds for Humankind in 2022. Let's first cover off where we've been so far this year. We started off with a first patch which really focused on fixing the game, on fixing a lot of systems that were broken, and it was certainly a mixed launch for the game as it launched on Epic, on Steam, on the Microsoft Store, on Stadia, and through Xbox Game Pass. As we moved through into future patches, we started seeing the developers turn their attention more towards specific features that were either not balanced or not working as intended. Think the end turn glitch has been fixed, now we're going to fix strategic resources, cultural balance. See you later, French building, right? Various changes as well at this point to the AI, the way the AI held sieges, shared projects, and upgraded its armies. And of course, sweeping changes across cultural affinities and military balancing as well. Certain cultural affinities like expansionists were playable and military units were better defined, and now in recent patches we've seen endgame conditions being fixed and a whole host of further game fixes and stability improvements, both in single player and, I'm pleased to report actually from recent success, in multiplayer as well. Overall, how do I summarize all of those changes that just appeared on screen in front of you succinctly? I would say that this has been the year of fixes for Humankind. That's not to say that it was a broken experience beyond belief, because it wasn't. I actually personally didn't really experience a lot of the things that I saw a lot of other people deal with on the forums. Things like being constantly stuck with that end-turn glitch, or being frustrated with the balance. I actually personally didn't suffer too much from those, but I can confidently say that from my own experience and from the experience of the community, that the year of fixes and that all of the patches that we've seen have done a great job at lifting Humankind into a more stable, balanced, and performing experience. Is it perfect? No. Do we have more progress to be made? You bet your backside. But is it working? Is it fun? And is it enjoyable? And have the patches delivered on what we would expect? Yes. Now, onto my report card. I'm going to reflect on 4 different areas of Humankind: content, support from Amplitude Studios, gameplay, and then the future. First off, though, I do just want to quickly mention this gameplay is quite spicy. It's a game that I sat down and played today, especially for this video. A couple of mods installed, nothing too crazy. Look at this AI opportunistically trying to capture my city here. This is wonderful, and actually it was the right move to make because it was completely undefended. Unfortunately for them, I've just upgraded my peasants though, so they might be out of luck. Anyway, let's review. First up, I want to talk content. So, what content have we seen from Humankind this year, and how has it changed? Well, as I've already mentioned, its launch was rocky. It really was. There was issues with stability and performance, glitches. Most of those, as I reflected on at the start of the video, have been ironed out and patched. We've seen significant updates since launch, but again, been mostly fixer-upper updates, although there have been a few really important gameplay features that I liked, like the cultural balancing that came in with patches number 2 and 3, and some of the more recent UI improvements as well that have really helped to change manual combat in Humankind, one of the things that it does a lot better than most of its competitors, and really iron out that system and lift it up to greatness. And I'm very, very happy actually with where that system is now in particular. However, on the downside for content, it is really important to note that while the content has been available on Xbox Game Pass entirely for free, go you, and on a demo version now on PC, so anybody with a Steam account can play a demo version, which is not too limited, of Humankind for free, and that is awesome. Our Mac friends have not been so lucky. There is not a full official released support version of Humankind, particularly for the newer Macs. I believe you're still having to run off some sort of beta version. So we have great progress in certain platforms. In fact, more than most. Being on Xbox Game Pass, for example, is a huge success for Humankind. However, I have to deduct points away because the Mac version hasn't been released, and also because most of the content for this year has been focused on fixing and improving rather than adding new things. I suspect, and I'll reflect more on this later, that 2022 will be a better year for that, and historically we would expect that when we look at other games, like for example Sid Meier's Civilization 6 or Civ 5. Overall for content, I'm giving Humankind a 7 out of 10 this year for its content overall. Now, let's move on to my second category, and that is support. What do I mean by support? Well, in a nutshell, how well has Humankind been supported by its developers or publishers? What kind of support have we seen also broadly from other players or actors and the community at large? I'd like to, firstly, I think, say a huge congratulations to Amplitude Studios on a launch that was clearly not as easy or ironed out as it could have been. If you remember, Humankind was delayed by several months. It was meant to release much earlier than August. But man, they've done a pretty good job, I think, on launching this game, on bringing it up to speed, on amplifying it, if you'll excuse the pun, and really providing a polished and universal experience from demo through to deluxe edition. The support, as you've also seen at the start of this video, if you didn't see it, I'd recommend you jump back to around the 1 minute mark and watch, has been incredible on the patch front as well. We've seen significant patch updates every month, sometimes multiple updates in a month, sometimes adding new features, but largely polishing, rendering, and improving what we've already got, really delivering that solid base experience to perhaps build on later. Their support on the forums and on Twitter and other platforms has been outstanding in my opinion, and from what I've heard from you guys in the comments and on my members and Twitch subscribers' private Discord as well. The discussion in there has been much the same, and I'm reflecting on many of those ideas as I'm delivering this video to you today as well, and I think that's really important to highlight. Overall, the support has been fast. They've been fast to patch, and they've been even faster to improve or tweak accidents. The most recent update in December, for example, had 2 quick follow-up patches to tweak things that weren't quite right. They were responsive on the forums, they were responsive with the patches. I really do think they've done a good job. And I should highlight here, because whenever I sing anything's praises, people will drag me over the coals for being sponsored or affiliated or whatever in any way. Absolutely not. And if you saw at the start of this video, you will have seen that I've been critical of Humankind where critical opinion is needed. And also I've praised it where praise is needed. Because in a world where a genre is dominated by one particular title, it can be hard for a game like Humankind to capture any limelight and not be drowned out. So I think it's important to sing praises, but also be critical where that critical voice is very much needed. Overall for support, I have to rank them really highly on this. They've been, in my opinion, and from what I've heard, nothing but responsive, nothing but respectful. They've added new features like events, but crucially tidied up the old ones and been really fast on the money. For support, I'm giving Humankind a 9 out of 10. Really job well done, in my opinion. My third category that I'd like to move on to next is gameplay, and it differs a little bit from content. As far as gameplay goes for Humankind, that category number 3 of my school report card, if you will, I think we have to consider things like access, performance, but also how does it actually play? Not analysing it from the higher level content, what have they provided, but actually on the ground, how does this experience perform? I think the patches that I talked about in the content section have done a good job at ironing out some particularly standout cultures that were a little bit too powerful, or cultural affinities that were just too weak, like the expansion stability. I still like to add certain challenges to my game to spice it up. Playing through a normal game for me is still a little bit perhaps too easy on normal levels, but when you've played a game for hundreds and hundreds of hours like me, you would expect that to be the case, so I'm not going to use that or hold that personal bias against it here in this section. In terms of overall gameplay performance, For a game that released in 2021 and looks pretty dang impressive, if I don't say so, as far as 4X historical strategy games go anyway, where you're essentially looking at a board full of tiles. This is a very pretty, I think, board full of tiles. But it's also a very smooth experience. Now, will it run on the absolute potato PCs? No. Probably not. It is a new game. You should check the minimum specs and the recommended specs, of course. But because it's available on Stadia, on Steam and Epic, and, of course, on Xbox Game Pass, you do have options to try it. Xbox Game Pass or the demo version on Steam, I would recommend would be a great way to just try it out and see if it works for you. But overall, it is a very well-performing game, particularly since launch. There were issues with performance from launch. Those have been fixed, and now I'm pretty confident to recommend Humankind as a great experience. Actually, I would even go as far as to say that the multiplayer now has moved from something that I would not recommend people play to something that I would recommend people try. Should you put all your eggs into the multiplayer basket right now? Probably not. But in my experience, it works and it's pretty fun. If you can put a few house rules in place, you're going to have a good time. I think overall, from what I've reflected on here, you can consider that from an accessibility, performance, and price point perspective, Humankind is in a very good place right now. You can pick it up for a 20% discount or play it for almost free on Game Pass or through the demo and have a good time with a well-performing 4X historical strategy game. If you want something that can run on any potato PC though, of course you should be playing Civilization 5. I won't be deducting points for those PCs at the fringe ends of gameplay and performance though. I would also in this section like to reflect just a little bit more on how gameplay has changed over time. Gameplay has changed significantly, I think, in terms of one really key factor, and that's pacing. Pacing has changed a lot. Not only can we change end conditions, which drastically impact how long you might want to spend in an era because you don't need to race for a certain thing, i.e. build a spaceship, go to Mars, doesn't just completely magically end the game. Who would have thought someone sending a spaceship doesn't end the world? Wow, you can actually keep playing and still have valid victory conditions to work towards. It's wonderful that they've implemented that system, but more broadly, the changes to things like late game technologies, making those more difficult to earn, changing some district scaling options, and more broadly impacting how quickly you earn those era stars and fame points that actually help you move through one of Humankind's 6 distinct eras. Ultimately have made the game a little more playable at the later speeds, a little more enjoyable at different difficulty levels. And overall, I think they've helped to shape Humankind's gameplay to be just that more smooth. Combine that with features, more Great England. Combine that with features that you can see here, like the little UI overlays that show me where I can move my units and which units they'll be able to attack, how much damage they're doing. It's a really smooth and enjoyable experience. For gameplay this year, I'm giving Humankind an 8 out of 10. It's still got a ways to go. Some of the late game units I'd like to see expanded on a little bit. Things like aircraft carriers, for example, could be better. Other scaling does need to take place with a few of the cultures as well. And maybe we need to see, I still believe, a little bit more tuning to the scientific and industrial culture abilities. Affinity abilities, I think they're just still a little bit too strong, even though all of the others have been buffed up. And all of the others, I think, for the most part anyway, are very good. Maybe not the merchant, but the rest are. I just think those other ones just need a slight dialing down, but overall, it's a much more enjoyable, well-performing, stable, and fun experience. And I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 for its gameplay this year. Finally, I want to reflect on the future of Humankind. I guess you could think about this section in the report as like the teacher's comments for next year. Like, hey Jimmy, you're gonna be in Mrs. Duncan's class next year, and I'd really like you to focus on doing your homework on time. Happy holidays, love Mrs. James, or whatever it might say. Here is my teacher's feedback, if you will, for the future of Humankind. First and foremost, and the most spicy news for the future, it's important to note, is that every year, Amplitude Studios run their own event where they have great discounts historically. Historically, they've made new announcements, or historically, they've, again, just had wonderful sales and focuses and creator spotlights and all sorts of wonderful things on their games. This year, they're calling it Amplified, just like they did last year, because now they've moved beyond just the Endless Legend franchise, but of course now they have Humankind as well. We're expecting a Humankind Day to take place at the Amplified festival, for lack of a better word. The Humankind Day, we should expect to have, hopefully, new announcements. Maybe we'll see some new gameplay features. Maybe we'll see some new cultures, updates to the game. I have no idea, literally no idea or no insider information. As I've already said, this is not a sponsored or affiliated video or experience, and all opinions are my own. I do expect, though, that as we look forward to 2022, and particularly because we're kicking it off with that Amplified event and with Humankind Day, we should expect to see some really spicy introductions to Humankind. Gameplay, features, elements, DLC, whatever it might be. Keep an eye out around the mid to late January period, because I expect we're going to see big things. However, that's just a short-term announcement for the future of Humankind. We need to reflect a little bit bigger than that while we take on a fight a little bit more grand than that too. This is a wonderful fight. I've really, really enjoyed this battle. Lots of different little units, and also, spoiler alert, a bit of a landslide. Anyway, about the future of Humankind. If I think back to a game like Civilization 5 and Civilization 6, they're my two most obvious comparisons because they are historical 4X strategy games. I think we should also, though, when we're drawing these comparisons, look to Endless Legend or Endless Space or other titles that Amplitude have played their part in, because of course, as a studio, they may also like to follow their own trends and histories. And if we reflect on both of those things and consider them in tangent and in conjunction with each other, it seems highly likely that year 2, we're calling 2021 year 1, even though it was sort of only half a year because Humankind released a bit late, we should expect year 2 and then of course year 3 to be big years for these games, okay? Think about it like this. Year 1 is very much the storming and forming year, okay? You release a new title out into the wild, it hits tens of thousands of players, potentially more if you've promoted it well or if you have a legacy like Civilization, and then it subsides. And then after that storming phase and that forming phase where it's sort of picking up the pieces, fixing what's broken, building itself a new reputation and image, after it forms and it storms, then you move into the new norm, the normal phase. That's where you can start layering things on top once you have that solid foundation. That's what, historically, we've seen years 2 and 3 bring to these kind of, let's be honest, relatively complex 4X games. If you play these all the time, they might not feel complex, but if you think back to the first time you played Civilization 4, or the first time you played Humankind, or Hearts of Iron, or whatever it might have been, these are complex games, and their foundations, therefore, are all the more detailed and intricate. I think that year 2 for Humankind, that in 2022, we will see the foundation being solidified a bit more. Right? Let's say it was taken from 50% to 90%. Now I think we'll see it taken from 90 to 95 or 99. Nothing will ever be perfect. And then we'll see the layering on of new things in Humankind, new cultures. Let's not forget that this year also brought the addition of betamod.io tools, inbuilt modding support in Humankind, and we've played some fantastic mods this year. More to come in future, likewise with custom maps, custom avatars, and all sorts of things on the horizon, and gameplay features like faith, for example, or global politics and geopolitical relations that can still be built on and added into this game. I think, personally, the future for Humankind is bright, and overall, I give its future prospects and foundations a 9 out of 10. We've built a solid base, and we are ready to move through and see what 2022 has to offer. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm JumboPixel if we haven't met, although we probably have if you've watched through until this point. Thank you so much. I play a lot of strategy games, and if you'd like to join in and join our wonderful community, please do consider hitting the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you next time.